It was a cold and quiet morning at the fire station, the kind where the streets are empty and even the wind seems to whisper secrets. Inside, the firefighters were going about their usual routines, checking equipment, sipping hot coffee, sharing casual jokes to break the monotony. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until one of them noticed movement at the gate. Standing there, just beyond the chain-link fence, was a scruffy, stray dog. At first glance, it didn't seem like anything special, just another lost soul wandering the city. But then they saw what was in its mouth. A single shoe. Not just any shoe, but one that was soaked in blood. The red stain had darkened the fabric, and it dripped faintly onto the concrete with each slow, deliberate step the dog took toward the entrance. The firefighters stood frozen, their laughter fading into silence. It took them a moment to process what they were seeing. One firefighter, thinking it might be some twisted prank, cautiously stepped forward, but as he knelt down and looked closer, a chill spread down his spine. This was real. The shoe was real. And the blood, there was no doubt about it, it was fresh. The dog didn't bark or growl. It simply stared at them with alert, intelligent eyes, then turned its head slightly and looked down the road. It repeated this motion, looking at them, then back toward the street, as if it was trying to communicate. There was an urgency in its behavior, a tension in its body, like it was waiting for them to understand. One firefighter whispered, "Is it trying to show us something?" No one answered. They were already stepping outside, drawn by the eerie calm surrounding this bizarre scene. The dog didn't run. It waited, watching to see if they would follow. The cold wind blew again, rustling leaves along the pavement, and somewhere in the distance a faint bark echoed, but it wasn't this dog's voice. The fire station, moments ago warm and filled with routine, now felt like the beginning of something dark and unknown. The dog, still gripping the bloody shoe in its mouth, took a few more steps, paused, and looked back once again. The firefighters exchanged glances, silent but unanimous. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And somehow this dog, this unexpected visitor, was the only one who knew what. One firefighter, heart pounding, reached down and gently took the bloody shoe from the dog's mouth. Turning it over carefully, he noticed something faint but legible scrawled on the inside of the sole. It was a name, Maria. The moment he spoke it aloud, the dog reacted instantly. With a sharp turn and sudden urgency, it bolted down the street. There was no barking, no hesitation, just focused, determined movement. The firefighters didn't waste a second. Fueled by instinct and the weight of what they had just seen, they grabbed their radios and followed. The dog moved quickly, weaving through narrow back alleys behind the station, its paws splashing through shallow puddles left by last night's rain. The firefighters trailed behind, navigating the maze of cracked concrete and rusting fences, their boots pounding in rhythm with the echo of urgency that now filled their minds. The morning chill deepened as they left the familiar streets behind and entered a quieter part of town. The buildings grew sparse. The noise of the city faded. Soon they reached the edge of the woods, dark, silent, and unsettlingly still. The dog didn't pause. It disappeared into the tree line without looking back. The firefighters hesitated only a second before plunging in after it, their flashlights cutting through the dense branches and casting long, flickering shadows across the forest floor. Leaves crunched underfoot. The air was colder here, heavier somehow, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The dog stayed just ahead, always visible, always watching to make sure they kept up. Twisting paths led them deeper and deeper into the woods, far from anything familiar or safe. They followed the sound of snapping twigs and the steady panting of the dog, their own breaths now ragged with exertion. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the dog stopped. It stood perfectly still in a small clearing surrounded by gnarled trees and thick underbrush. The firefighters approached cautiously, their beams scanning the area. And that's when they saw it. Lying just off the narrow trail was a figure, still motionless, barely visible beneath a blanket of fallen leaves and dirt. One of them rushed forward and dropped to his knees. It was a woman. Her face was pale, lips cracked, and a deep gash ran along her leg, staining her jeans dark with blood. Her other shoe was missing. It was Maria. Her pulse was faint, but she was alive. The men sprang into action, calling in for emergency medical support, using their jackets to keep her warm, applying pressure to her wound. The dog stood nearby, silent, watching. It had led them straight to her. Through the city, through the forest, through everything. No one could explain how or why, but they all knew one thing. Without that dog, Maria would never have been found. Lying motionless on the damp forest floor was a woman, her body curled slightly, her face pale, and her breathing barely visible in the cold morning air. Her leg was soaked in blood, the wound deep and raw, with the torn fabric of her jeans clinging to it like a second skin. One of her shoes was gone, the same shoe the dog had carried to the fire station. The firefighters moved fast, instincts kicking in. One checked for a pulse, pressing 2 fingers gently against her neck. It was there, faint and thready, but it was enough. "She's alive," he said, though his voice trembled with urgency. Another firefighter dropped to his knees beside her, pulling off his jacket and wrapping it around her torso to conserve heat. The rest cleared the surrounding area, checking for any signs of danger or clues to how she had ended up here. There was no phone, no bag, no sign of another person. It was just Maria, lost, hurt, and alone until now. As they worked, one firefighter reached for his radio and called in the emergency. "We have a female, late 20s, unconscious with severe blood loss. Immediate medical evac needed." His voice was sharp and controlled, but inside, his heart was racing. Around them, the forest seemed to hold its silence, as if nature itself was waiting to see if she would make it. The only sounds were their hurried movements, the occasional crackle of the radio, and the distant wail of sirens now making their way through the city. Time felt suspended. Maria's lips were dry and cracked, her skin cold to the touch. She had clearly been out here for a long time, likely the full 2 days she had been missing. The puzzle pieces clicked together quickly in everyone's minds. She had been injured, lost consciousness, and might have died out here if no one had found her. But someone did. Or rather, something. Just a few feet away, the dog sat watching. It hadn't moved much since leading them here, as if it knew this was the moment it had waited for. There was no barking, no wagging tail, just stillness, alertness, presence. One firefighter glanced at the dog and then at Maria, shaken by the thought of how close she had come to dying. If that dog hadn't shown up at the station when it did, if it hadn't known where to go or who to trust, Maria would still be lying here, undiscovered and dying. She was fading fast, and every second counted. But now she had a chance. As the distant sirens grew louder, cutting through the thick woods like a promise, the firefighters knew they were no longer alone in this rescue. They were part of something bigger, something inexplicable. A stray dog, one no one had cared for, had just saved a life. That day, the stray dog was no longer just a forgotten soul wandering the streets. He was a hero. The firefighters, once strangers to him, now saw him as one of their own. They named him Hero, a fitting tribute to the silent guardian who had done what no one else could. News of his bravery spread quickly, with cameras capturing the moment he wagged his tail proudly as Maria recovered. He now lives at the fire station, a loyal companion to those he saved. Because sometimes the greatest heroes don't wear capes. They walk on 4 legs and carry a bloody shoe,